Unbelievable story of America, from revolution to superpower. Ever wonder how the United States went from a handful of rebellious colonies to a global powerhouse? It's a story filled with war, ambition, resilience, and shocking twists you won't believe. Buckle up as we take a deep dive into the epic history of America. Before America, land of the First Nations, pre-1492, 1607. Long before the Founding Fathers, millions of Native Americans thrived across North America. Their civilizations were as advanced and diverse as any in the world. The Maya and Aztecs built cities, pyramids, and calendars that still baffle historians. The Iroquois Confederacy was an advanced political system that inspired parts of the U.S. Constitution. The Puebloans carved entire cities into cliffs, mastering desert survival. Then, in 1492, everything changed. Christopher Columbus landed in the Caribbean, opening the floodgates for European explorers. Spain, France, and England raced to claim land, bringing disease, war, and conquest that devastated indigenous populations. The birth of the 13 colonies, 1607-1776. Imagine arriving in a wild, untamed land, trying to survive with no grocery stores, no medicine, and no backup plan. That's what English settlers faced in Jamestown, Virginia, 1607, the first permanent British colony. Over the next century, the 13 colonies stretched along the East Coast, each with its own personality. New England focused on trade and shipbuilding. The middle colonies became farming and cultural hubs. The southern colonies built massive plantations using enslaved labor. By the 1700s, the colonies thrived, but they had a major problem. Britain was treating them like a cash machine. Heavy taxes, unfair laws, and no voice in government sparked outrage. Rebellion was on the horizon. The American Revolution, 1775-1783. What started as protests over tea and taxes quickly turned into a full-blown war. The colonies, led by George Washington, faced the might of the British Empire, the world's most powerful military. Against all odds, the ragtag American militias won crucial battles, helped by France's support. On July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was signed, America was born. But the war raged on for 7 brutal years before Britain finally surrendered in 1783. America had won. But now came the real challenge, building a country from scratch. The young nation in westward expansion, 1783-1860. With independence secured, the U.S. had to figure out how to govern itself. Early years were rocky. The first government under the Articles of Confederation was too weak to enforce laws. In 1787, the U.S. Constitution was created, introducing checks and balances and a Bill of Rights. George Washington became the first president, setting crucial precedents. But the country wanted to expand, and fast. Key moments included 1803. The Louisiana Purchase doubled U.S. land overnight. Napoleon basically said, "Take it, I need cash for wars." 1830s. The Trail of Tears forced thousands of Native Americans off their land, one of the darkest chapters in U.S. history. 1846, 1848. The Mexican-American War added California, Texas, and the Southwest to the map. But expansion brought a huge problem: slavery. The North and South were on a collision course for war. The Civil War, 1861-1865, brother versus brother. By 1860, America was divided beyond repair. The North opposed slavery while the South depended on it for their economy. When Abraham Lincoln was elected, the South saw it as a threat and seceded, forming the Confederate States of America. The Civil War was bloody, brutal, and personal. 620,000 Americans died, more than in any other U.S. war. Then, in 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring enslaved people free in Confederate states. 2 years later, the Union won, but Lincoln was assassinated days later. Rise of industry and America's glow-up, 1877-1914. Fast forward a few decades, and America was booming. Trains, steel, and oil turned the U.S. into an economic powerhouse. Millionaires like Rockefeller and Carnegie built industrial empires. Ellis Island became the gateway for millions seeking the American dream. But not everything was great. Child labor, corruption, and worker exploitation were rampant. Reform movements fought for change, setting the stage for modern labor rights. World Wars and the Great Depression, 1914 and 1945. The 20th century brought major global conflicts. 1917, the U.S. entered World War I, helping the Allies win. 1929, the stock market crash led to the Great Depression. Millions lost jobs and homes. 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal helped rebuild the economy. Then in 1941, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, dragging the U.S. into World War II. By 1945, America emerged as a superpower after dropping atomic bombs on Japan. The Cold War and Civil Rights, 1945 to 1991. The Cold War wasn't a traditional war. It was a 45-year showdown between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. 1950s. 60s. The U.S. fought communism in Korea and Vietnam. 1960s, the Civil Rights Movement, led by Martin Luther King Jr., fought segregation. 1969, the U.S. put a man on the moon. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and the U.S. was left as the world's dominant superpower. The modern era, 1991 present. 2001 9/11 attacks led to wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. 2008, the Great Recession shook the economy. 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic changed life worldwide. Today, the U.S. is still a powerhouse of technology, culture, and politics, but faces new challenges like climate change, social justice, and global conflicts. Why America's story is unfinished. The U.S. has come a long way from a rebellious colony to a global leader, but history never stops. The next chapter? That's still being written. What do you think is the biggest turning point in American history?